All right. So, mute. Good morning, everyone. Alan, would you watch for muting? Okay.
You have to make me a co-host.
I did. Or did it? Oh, did it go away? Okay. All right. So, good morning, everybody. This is Tony Barriant. I'm the president of the Hearing Loss Association of America Mission Viejo chapter. We are having quite a few people from out of state join us.
Excuse me, Tony. I'm still not co-host.
So who is not? Okay, so mute everybody. Okay. Prior to introducing our guest, I just want to run through a few slides.
Oh, good. It's being recorded.
Okay. So this meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted on the chapter's YouTube channel in about 2 or 3 days. So if you don't want to be seen, I suggest you turn your camera off, but I just want you to be aware that the meeting is being recorded. Technical support is available from Alan Katsura. Let's see. Alan, I am going to spotlight you for everybody. This is Alan Katsura. You can reach him in your in the chat box. Okay. And next slide is, yeah, please use the chat function for technical support. And today we can use that for your questions that you have for our special guest. You can also raise your hand. The Hearing Loss Association does not endorse any single product or service. This meeting is intended to provide information, education, and support. We do have a sponsor. Our sponsor is Caption Call. Caption Call actually pays for our captioner. And just so you know, I give them a 1-minute advertisement. They provide captioning on for your landline, with a phone, for your iPhone, and it's also available on Android and iPad, and the service is available to consumers at no charge. So if you have hard time hearing on the phone, if you struggle with any phone calls, this is a really good solution for you. Also, you can save the captions, which is great if you're getting instructions from your doctor or pharmacist, and you need to retain that information. You can save it. And there's always a Caption Call representative available to support you over the phone, and in some cases come to your home and instruct you. So because life is calling, please call them. If you're already a customer and have questions, this is the line, the support line you can call. 877-557-2227. Okay. The Hearing Loss Association Mission Viejo chapter is a 501c3, and tax deductions may be available for you depending on your tax status. So we hope you will consider donating to the chapter and help us cover our expenses. The chapter is all volunteer. No one receives any compensation of any kind, and we depend on your donations for your support. Our website, hlaamv.org. If you have questions that you would like to communicate with me privately, that's my name, my phone number, and my email address. I prefer email, and which is great. I can respond in email and include attachments and be a better service to you. We are on Twitter and we're on Facebook, so look for us there. And please like us on Facebook. Okay, so let's see. I would like to now turn this over to our special guest, and we have a lot of people registered and joining in today. So raising your hand in your little video will not be effective. So we ask that you please raise your hand using the raise your hand function in your reaction tool, or submit your question in the chat box. Okay, so I would like to introduce you to Paul Sanchez, and he is the executive officer for the I have to read this, Speech, Language, Pathology, Audiology, and Hearing Aid Dispensers Board. And today he's going to talk to us about licensing requirements of our healthcare, hearing healthcare providers, trial periods for hearing aids, deposit and purchase receipts. I think it's really important because they are important, even the small print. How to file a complaint. And he's going to talk a little bit about the federal government program that has about over-the-counter hearing aids. And also here in the state of California, there is an initiative, legislation initiative for locked hearing aids. So he'll give us a little information about that. So, Paul, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'm going to ask you, give us a little bit about your history with the Slap Happy board, and maybe even mention briefly how we met back in 2015, and then we look forward to your presentation. I've made you a co-host. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can begin sharing at any time your slides. And so welcome, Paul.
Thank you. And good morning, Tony. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here in front of you to be able to talk about a topic that I find very interesting. I have been with the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology and Hearing Aid Dispensers Board. That's the name the legislature gave us. I've been with this board now since 2014. Prior to that, I've always been in consumer protections or in the service areas of state government. Prior to that, I was protecting consumers with the Veterinary Medical Board. So I learned a lot more about veterinary medicine than I ever thought that I would want to know. Tony, yes.
Your voice is very low.
Okay.
Is there? I don't know if there's something in volume you can increase your volume in your microphone.
You know what I'll try to do is I'll try to speak up and just talk a little louder.
Okay, but I still want you to have a voice at the end of the.
That's okay.
I don't want you to yell, but I just want you to know my experience is your voice is a little dim. It's kind of quiet.
Okay.
So if there's any volume you can increase, that would be great.
You know, I'll do my best. I don't think there's much I can do other than just speaking louder, and I will definitely try to do that. So I I was with the Veterinary Medical Board, and prior to that, I worked with retired state teachers. So I met Tony back when she started attending board meetings and got involved with some of the consumer protection issues that we were looking at. And I always appreciated her level of activism and some of the issues that we have. So I'm really happy to be here again. I want to thank Tony and thank all of the members of HLAA. I'm really impressed with this group, not just with your group. I've actually been there physically to visit you, but I'm also impressed with the group nationwide and what they do for consumers. And I think we share many of the same goals. So I'm going to start. I'm going to share my screen here. You'll bear with me. And all the things that Tony discussed, I want to make sure that we cover those things. And I'm going to talk about consumer protection and hearing aid licensing laws, and just try to see if I could answer questions and maybe provide some valuable information for you. So the first question that I would ask is who are we? Who is the board, and why are we here? Well, we're part of state government, and I put a little chart there on the right side so you can see how close we are actually to the level to the governor's administration when it comes to where we are. We work under the umbrella organization of the Department of Consumer Affairs. The Department of Consumer Affairs came about in the early 70s, back when Governor Brown was doing his first stint at governor. And during that time, they saw the need to expand and provide structure to some of these boards, some of these licensing boards. If you could just bear with me here, I'm trying to see. I lost the screen for.
Excuse me, Paul.
Yes.
Can you hit your F5 key so your presentation goes to full screen? Right now,
Yes.
we're seeing your actual window with all your other slides and everything.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this.
If you hit the F5 key, it should go to
Okay.
your slide view.
I'm hitting F5. Let me try this
Nothing.
here. And it doesn't seem to be doing anything.
Or you could go to slideshow and start slideshow.
Sometimes you have to hold down the function key, Ellen.
Okay. Did that do anything?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and start all over again.
I'm moving the slider at the bottom right-hand corner to the plus. The slider. The plus. The slider. Okay. There's a
Okay, just. It's showing on my side that it's in slide mode, but I've had this problem before where I'm presenting and someone tells me, no, we're seeing everything. So let me try this again. I know what I'm supposed to do. Okay. I'm so sorry. Tell me if that's working now.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. And I'm trying to also see my chat screen. So I'll just have, because I lost my big screen here that shows me everything. So if you could just interrupt me if there's questions, I'll be happy to stop and talk about those things. So let's go where we are in state government. We're responsible for the practices of speech language pathology, audiology, and hearing aid dispensing. Our board is mostly appointed by the governor, and it's made up of, because we oversee 3 different professions and license types, we have members from each profession, and most importantly, 3 public members. One of our public members has to actually be an ear, nose, and throat board certified surgeon. Our board office, we have about 13 employees, and we work with law enforcement agencies throughout the state. I've had the pleasure of working with various district attorneys, the state attorney general's office, and the state's division of investigation. Real recently, well, not recently, but probably in the last 5 or 6 years, we had a situation where a hearing aid dispensing franchise, a large organization in Northern California, was doing a bait and switch, and it spanned about 4 different counties. In one case, it was a veteran, a World War II veteran, and he made the news because one of these, I think it was called Call Curtis in Northern California, and it was a consumer watch newscaster, found out that this person had been, basically ripped off by this organization. The same hearing aid dispensing franchise lured a nun through an ad for a $500 hearing aid. She got the priest to write her a check. She came to buy her $500 hearing aid. She was elderly, and she was talked into a credit scheme that got her into $8,000 of debt. She was so upset that she didn't want to go back to the convent, instead went to like a Hilton Garden Inn or a local motel, just frantic, just really stressed out. We were able to work with the DAs and actually stop these practices and revoke the license, and those people are no longer, that particular company is no longer in business. So we partner with law enforcement agencies, and I think that's a very, very good thing that we have. Why do we need a licensing board? Well, we need a licensing board to protect the public, because the legislature realizes that speech language pathology, one of the things that we do, and many of us have family members who've had strokes, who've had to work with a speech language pathologist. They deal with also children, and then audiologists and hearing aid dispensers, who we know deal with people with hearing loss. The legislature thinks it's important, and it needs to be subject to regulation and control. We also exist as a consumer protection agency, as we're going to discuss more. So I think that we have a very important role, not just in government, but in society. Our responsibilities are making sure that people are licensed properly, that they meet the qualifications, that people are taking the appropriate examinations. If you're going to be a doctor of audiology, you have to take certain examinations. And then we enforce the Practice Act. What's the point of having a law if you don't enforce the law? So we make sure that people are abiding by the law, and if they don't, there's consequences. And we make changes in the laws, as you're going to see in my discussion, and in our regulations. We make changes that are necessary. Why is a license important? Because a license authorizes the individual to practice his or her profession. Some people think that, well, they just have licenses to get money from people. We don't charge very much for the licenses that we issue in comparison to the cost of maintaining a license or making sure that people are abiding by laws. A license is a privilege. It must be earned and maintained. So every licensee has to make sure that they're maintaining their license and that they're being properly trained and educated. A license requires someone to maintain a minimum standard. And most importantly, again, I'll say this over and over again, it protects consumers from harm unqualified and unprofessional or unlawful practices. Now, sometimes you'll see in advertisements that someone has a certification. Like they may say they're nationally certified or they're certified by the American such and such organization, or they have a different title, audio technologist or something along those lines. We license hearing aid dispensers and audiologists. There's also a term called the dispensing audiologist. Anything else other than that is not a license. It's not authorization to practice, okay? A certification is different than a license. It's issued by a professional association. It does denote that someone has a specific qualification or expertise, and it's it's not necessarily a legal authorization to practice. So I'm telling you all of this just to kind of give you a foundation of who we are and what we license. Now, you can see there's a lot of the types of people that we license, just to break down. In 2022, there's about 25,000 speech language pathologists. There's about 2,000 audiologists, and there's about 1,500 hearing aid dispensers in California. So to serve the entire population of California, we're talking about roughly less than 4,000 people. One thing that I know Tony has liked to talk about and likes me to inform people of is the difference in qualifications. Because when you look at an advertisement can be glossy, glitzy, it can look beautiful and very professional. Some of these advertisements are created by national corporate structures, companies, and they're very sleek and they promise lots of things. And some of them they actually are able to honor their promises, but some of them we found are not. So the important thing to understand is, one, that someone's licensed and the level of education or the requirements that they have. So I listed all of the people that have to do with hearing aids. The first one is an audiologist. So an audiologist can dispense hearing aids, and prior to doing that, they get a doctoral degree. They get about, in addition to the doctoral degree, that includes 600 to 800 hours of supervised clinical practice. And then they have to get 1 year of required professional experience under supervision. They're fingerprinted with the DOJ, the FBI, so we keep track of any other issues they might have with law enforcement. And they have to take and pass a national exam. Now, if that same audiologist, if you look at this chart, there's a third license type that says dispensing audiologist. If that same audiologist wants to sell hearing aids in California, they also have to take a state written and practical exam. They come to our office and they actually do a hands-on exam, and we make sure that they can properly fit hearing aids. Right above that is an audiology aide. That's someone who works in the audiologist's office. They're just support personnel. They're not licensed to fit or sell hearing aids. They have to be licensed. Now, a hearing aid dispenser, what we require from a hearing aid dispenser is that these folks are intended to test for hearing aids only. They're not there to diagnose hearing loss or any other medical conditions you might have. They are hearing aid dispensers. They are required to have a high school diploma or equivalent, to be 18 years of age, fingerprinted with the DOJ, and they also have to take the state written and practical exam. So they also have to pass that. Sometimes under them, they have trainees that are working. The trainees have no specific requirement other than to get a permit with the board and work under supervision. And when they want to get fully licensed, they take and pass the written and practical exam. So you can see there's a difference in what's expected of these two license types. So the main thing we're talking about here is the audiologist that dispenses and the hearing aid dispenser. A hearing aid dispenser is there to test and sell hearing aids, test for hearing loss for the purpose of fitting a hearing aid, not to diagnose anything else. So if you have other issues, if you have tinnitus or something else going on, or if you have balance issues, that's where you want to go to an audiologist or to your ear, nose, and throat doctor, who will refer you to an audiologist. Now, in addition to getting a license, they have to keep their license. And the continuing education requirements are similar for all license types. The dispenser that is an audiologist and the hearing aid dispenser both have to do 12 hours of continuing education every year. And the audiologist has you 24 hours every 2 years, which is the same. So those are the same. And I want to really make it a point that we have many great hearing aid dispensers in California. I've worked with them. Many of them really know they know their stuff, for lack of a better term, but the qualifications are different. And I've also worked with many great audiologists. And we have some bad players out there, unfortunately. Most of them are good. Most of them are law-abiding citizens who really are in this to help people. But you always have to beware, because some people are just in it for the wrong reasons. So that gets to enforcement. That gets to, as I sometimes tell our board members, because we're always reminded of our consumer protection job, that the law is for the lawless. And that's why we have enforcement, because sometimes people break the law and they have to deal with the consequences. Here are some of the things we do investigate. These things have come up in the past. They don't happen all the time, but a sexual misconduct, conviction of a criminal offense that's related to the profession, negligence. Now we're dealing with the actual practice of the profession, and something that in which the licensee was negligent. Anything outside of the licensee's scope of practice or below minimum standards. And then deceptive or misleading advertising and unlicensed practice. Again, when we talk about out of scope, if you have a medical issue, or if you have something beyond needing a hearing aid, you want to see the person that's qualified to deal with that. And that's going to be, you're going to go through your primary care, and they're going to refer you to an audiologist, depending on what the issue is. Sometimes we're asked, what will the board investigate? Sometimes we're asked to look into other issues like fee or billing disputes. There's a difference between fee and a billing dispute and a warranty dispute. And I'll talk about the Song-Beverly Consumer Protection Law, which is basically the lemon law for hearing aids, a little bit later. But we don't deal with fees or billing issues. That's something that's outside of our jurisdiction. We don't deal with business practices, personalities, the level of customer service or rudeness that you have to deal with, or anything that's outside of our jurisdiction. When you decide to file a complaint, we receive that complaint, we issue it a case number, we'll send the complainant an acknowledgement letter. That information is confidential. In some cases, we have to actually, investigate with the licensee. So they may know who's filing the complaint based on the investigation. Depending on the seriousness of the allegations or the number of complaints received against a particular individual, that case can be referred to an investigator. So sometimes it involves a badge and a gun because we have to involve law enforcement. We may close the investigation with no action. We may issue a citation. We may actually issue a fine as a corrective action or go to formal discipline, which is oftentimes seeking revocation. Sometimes, sometimes I know in my gut that the person is wrong. I know they broke the law. I can see the writing on the wall. I can read between the lines. I know exactly what's going on. After you've done this for so many years, you know what the different schemes are. But that doesn't mean that I can prove it in court. So sometimes a consumer will say, how could you let this person get away with this? You closed it and you said that it was insufficient evidence. Well, that's exactly why, because we didn't have enough evidence to take it before a judge and prove to a judge that this person broke the law. So when we do investigate, I ask that you be as clear as possible, give us as much information as possible so that we can properly prosecute the case. If at times we're not able to get them the first time, I've always found that people will eventually, that do wrong will eventually dig a hole deep enough that they're going to fall in it. And sometimes we don't get them the first time, we get them the second or third time. So that's just a point I wanted to make, that even though an investigation is closed, it may be closed because we just didn't have enough evidence to prove it. If we go to formal discipline, that involves the Attorney General's office, and there's legal proceedings, and then it ultimately goes before the board. Whatever happens, we tell the complainant at the very end what the disposition is. Once we take a case, it's the board's case. We're only going to talk to you about it at the very end, unless we need evidence or we need more information. Those citations are posted for the public, and they're made public for 5 years. Formal discipline is on the licensee's record permanently. And if you go to our board website, one of the most important things, and I should have included a slide on this, is that you see the person that you're seeing, that you check out their license. One, make sure they have a license. It's called license verification or license lookup. Make sure they have a license, and you can see on that board website whether or not they have any discipline, whether they've been cited or whether they've been disciplined by the board. So that's really important. And I'll have to remember to put that in my slides next time. Now let's talk about advertising. We used to see lots of newspaper advertisements, these full-page colored advertisements, you know, the world's best hearing aid, the world's smallest hearing aids. This hearing aid will cure your any issues with dementia or things like that. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's what they were making promises that they couldn't necessarily prove. So the law in Business and Professions Code 651 forbids any dissemination of public communication containing false, fraudulent, misleading, or deceptive statements, a claim, or an image. Anything that's likely to induce rendering of professional services or products in connection with the license. Public communication means mail, television, radio, picture, newspaper. And now what we're seeing is the internet or social media. So you're gonna, you know, if you even look it up, if you look up hearing aids on Google and you go on Facebook, or you just open up Google, you're gonna be blasted with ads on hearing aids. We know that that's how that works, and that's where a lot of these advertisements happen. False or misleading, fraudulent, deceptive statements include a misrepresentation of fact, likely to deceive or mislead, intended to create false expectations. So when they say, we're looking for 10 people, 10 lucky people to come and try this new hearing aid on a trial basis. No, they just want you to come in because you're a customer, you're a fish and they're fishing. They want you to come in and they want you to buy a hearing aid. Sometimes they're bait and switch tactics. So I'm not saying everyone that does this is a bait and switch, but we know that sometimes they are. I want to go back to a question on continuing education. Somebody said, most continuing education seems to be provided by manufacturers. Are there any other requirements for user-oriented training? Yes. Continuing education for hearing aid dispensers has to be approved by the board. So if we see that continuing education is just a way to teach them how to sell that hearing aid, we're not going to approve that. It has to actually be about the content of the continuing education. So
Thank
going
you very
back
much,
to,
Paul.
pardon? I didn't hear that, Mary.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. So as far as false or misleading, intended to create false expectations, likely to deceive or mislead. You know, basically, you know, just watch out, beware, know what do your homework, do your research, and look around. There are many good deals out there. There are many players out there that, you know, make sure that their hearing aid dispensers have good training and they're ethical and good professional practitioners. This is just a funny little ad. You know, my kids like to watch this movie around Christmas time, and I don't know if any of you have ever watched this. Will Ferrell plays the elf. He comes from the North Pole. He's walking through the streets of New York, and he sees this beautiful sign, this neon sign that says the world's best cup of coffee. And he's so naive and so excited that he runs in there and he says, "Oh my God, you did it. Congratulations. You created the world's best cup of coffee. Good job, everyone. It's so great to be here." And everyone looks at him like he's from another planet because he's dressed like an elf. But obviously we know that that's not the world's best cup of coffee. And the same goes for hearing aids. You know, these claims that they make, sometimes you have to really watch out for that. There's claims of professional superiority without objective scientific evidence. Sometimes they have these long ads that have a lot of information and they look very official, like new scientific study says whatever. Misleading testimonials. Price ads should be exact, not as low as or up to or lowest prices. They can't compensate representatives of the media or television for professional publicity unless it's made known. We had a very respectable news anchor in Sacramento that was well known and one of the most trusted. And he was advertising for one of these companies. And we made sure that they put on their advertisement that he was paid to do this. Because it, you know, when you get a face up there that you trust, it makes the ad seem more credible. So that's what I wanted to talk about on advertising. Now, the other important thing is that for hearing aids, there's actually a law that protects consumers that, you know, all new and used hearing aids have to be sold with a written warranty. It has to be in a 10-point font. If it doesn't fit your needs, it can be returned within 45 days of the initial date of delivery to the buyer. If you return the hearing aid, the seller can either adjust the hearing aid without charge and in a reasonable amount of time, replace the hearing aid, or promptly refund the total amount paid. Not part of it. You don't get charged a restocking fee. It's the entire amount paid. Now, sometimes I've heard people say, we're gonna, you know, we want to give you the best service, so we want you to sign this agreement that gives you a 6-month journey. And during that 6 months, we're gonna make this thing fit you really well. So be patient. If it doesn't fit you in, you know, in 2 months, just keep coming back to us. We'll keep making adjustments. Well, once you've exceeded that 45-day period, they're not obligated to refund your money. So watch out for those journeys or those agreements that require you to try something for longer than 45 days. When a sale is rescinded, a no charge or penalty or other fee may be imposed in connection with the purchase, fitting, financing, or return of the device. So that's something I want to, you know, make really clear, that you're entitled to a total refund if this doesn't fit you. Sometimes they'll say, you have to let us adjust this. You have to let us adjust it. If the hearing aid isn't working for you and it doesn't meet your needs, you're entitled to a refund. So how do you file a complaint? If you ever get to the point where you need to file a complaint against a licensee, this is our website. It's speechandhearing.ca.gov. On the side of the webpage, there's the very first thing under quick hits is filing a complaint against the licensee. Okay. And that will take you to the forms that you need to fill out. Right underneath that is license verification. So when you decide to see anyone, whether it's a doctor, a dentist, a contractor that's going to come and do repairs on your house, check out their license. Make sure that they're in good standing with the board. Make sure they have a license, because there are scammers out there. And that's in any profession that requires a license. You don't want to have a person come and work on your house and then, you know, fall through the ceiling, and then you're liable for their injuries because they weren't insured or bonded. And I know you all know all this stuff. I'm just a friendly public service reminder here. If you are going to file a complaint, This is just another page that shows you the process on filing a complaint, the consumer complaint form. We have a special form for hearing aids that we need you to fill out because we need some additional information there. And then I wanted to point out that there's something new on the horizon, not really new, I won't say it's new, but over-the-counter hearing aids, as we go more to the world of Amazon and buying things online, there are hearing aids that are being sold online. You don't know where you're buying these hearing aids from. You could be buying them from somewhere in Asia. You could be buying them from someone in Sacramento, California. But as you can see, it takes a certain expertise to fit a hearing aid. You want someone that knows what you're doing. You might say, wow, well, look, I could buy this hearing aid from someone in China for a ridiculous amount of money. It's really cheap, but you get what you paid for. And you may end up just spending your money on something that you can't return and you have no rights to return. So there are hearing aids being sold online. There are people claiming to sell over-the-counter hearing aids. Over-the-counter hearing aids are not approved by the FDA yet. It's just being, the regulations have to be finalized before we have an over-the-counter hearing aid. We were really fortunate in that Rob Bonta partnered with the board in putting out this consumer alert, just telling consumers, beware. There's a growing popularity and there's a lot of confusion about direct-to-consumer hearing aids. And maybe some of you, or maybe someone has purchased a hearing aid online and it's worked out great for you. And I say congratulations to you, that's wonderful. But I would not recommend that for anyone. One of the messages that the Attorney General said is to make sure you see a specialist, make sure you see a licensee before you go out to buy a hearing aid. What is going on with over-the-counter hearing aids? Well, in 2017, the federal government and the president signed the FDA Reauthorization Act of 2017, which develops regulations to create a category of over-the-counter hearing aids for adults with self-perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. One of the problems that we have as a board is that it's self-perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. How many of us are really capable of diagnosing the difference between mild to moderate hearing loss or severe hearing loss? Fact of the matter is, by the time most people realize they have hearing loss, it's usually beyond mild to moderate. As a matter of fact, I may be at the point of now at least having mild to moderate hearing loss because it's getting harder and harder for me to understand what my wife says when she's talking to me. And my doctor said, is it possibly selective hearing? But in all seriousness, it's really difficult for us to self-diagnose or know when we have hearing loss. These hearing aids, over-the-counter hearing aids, are designed for those with mild to moderate hearing loss. Some of our concern is that it doesn't have appropriate consumer protections like device output limits and levels. You can turn those things up and blast your ears and do potential harm to your ears. There's no verification. Minors can just will be able to go to a drugstore and buy these if they're selling them. And we don't know if they're appropriate. I think the legislature had really good intention here because they know that not everyone can afford hearing aids. They know that there's not coverage. And the idea is that something is better than nothing. And I understand that, and I understand the need for that. And I think the board understands that. So we're raising these concerns to hope that we can make some improvements. One of the most important things is there's no real return policy to ensure consumer protections like we have in California for prescription hearing aids. The need to improve labeling requirements, the appropriate size and warning label. I was presenting to a group a couple weeks ago and someone asked me, who in the heck reads the warning labels? Well, I took some pills that I thought were Tylenol because I had a headache. I was feeling very drowsy. I told my wife, I don't know what's going on. I'm feeling very drowsy today. I need to go to sleep. The next day I look at that little tiny bottle of Tylenol and in little red letters, it said PM. Everything was in big, bold blue letters, but the little red letters said PM. Well, I put myself to sleep by taking the wrong medication. So I think that can happen to anyone. We want people to be able to read these labels. And the other issue we have is the term of the use dispenser. In California, a dispenser is a person who is qualified, who is licensed by the board, and is authorized to sell hearing aids. So we want to make sure that not anyone can just open up shop and call themselves a dispenser and make us all believe that they know what they're doing. I agree. The comment is over-the-counter hearing aids have been out for 20 plus years, and people need to understand the quality of the device varies. You get what you paid for. And unfortunately, we have had what they call PSAPs. And I know if you got, those Sunday newspaper ads, they usually have like a little newspaper magazine in the middle. They would advertise what looked like hearing aids, but they're amplification devices. And the FDA is going to approve what they consider to be the designation of over-the-counter hearing aids. Something that the board recently has been working on was locked hearing aid legislation. So in September 2021, the governor signed into law Assembly Bill 435 from Assembly Member Mullen, who has been an advocate for those with hearing loss. The law requires that hearing aid dispensers and dispensing audiologists provide a written notice if the hearing aid being used uses proprietary or locked programming software. For instance, if I knew of an elderly woman who was, from up north, she went to visit her daughter. Her daughter took her to a large retailer, got her some hearing aids, and then when she went back home to where there weren't a lot of hearing aid outlets, she found out that her hearing aid could not be adjusted. She said, "Why not?" "Well, because it's locked. You have to have a certain software or programming." So those hearing aids were basically not useful to her, and she had to go out and buy another set of hearing aids. All we want is for those people that are selling hearing aids to let you know if you can only have it programmed through that particular company. Written notice needs to be signed by the purchaser, and the licensee is required to retain a copy consistent with current record retention requirements. That's some of the things that we're doing. I think that the most important thing is do your research, do your homework, and make sure that whatever you get to help improve your quality of life and your hearing, make sure that it meets your needs and that you're aware of laws. We have, I have some information for you. We have a public board meetings. Our next one is May of 22. You can watch it. They're live in webcast. We have a web address. Our website is speechandhearing.ca.gov, and we're located in Sacramento. And I've included our email, our general mailbox, and our telephone number. This time, I want to open it up to any questions that any of you might have for us. I'm going to try to.
Paul, regarding the board meetings, now they're all captioned, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So now before we get into questions, I want to say that after Paul has finished his presentation, which he has, and after we answer all the questions, there's a very special announcement that will be made, and it's about casting. So please stay for after we say goodbye to Paul for this very special announcement from InnoCaption. Okay, so let's see here what the questions are. Well, here's a comment. It says, regarding continuing education hours, most seem to be provided by the manufacturers. Are there any?
Yes, and Tony, I did address that question.
Okay. Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yes,
I'm sorry. Okay. So Ann Mundell had a comment. Ann Mundell is our audiologist chapter advisor. And she says over the counter hearing aids have been out about 20 years. and people need to understand the quality of the devices, and you get what you pay for. And you know, there is an over-the-counter hearing aid you can get at CVS for $19.95. So
Right, and I wanted to just point out that what I'm referring to is what the FDA will consider over-the-counter hearing aids. There's a really fine line, and I'm sure that that she's much more qualified to talk about what hearing aids are and the differences. But some of these, what we call PSAPs, personal sound application products, I think that's what it stands for, are very similar to what you're going to see in over-the-counter hearing aids. But what I was referring to are the actual over-the-counter hearing aids that are going to be created by manufacturers that are designated as over-the-counter hearing aids and can be called that. Someone else, do you want me to go through the questions, Tony?
sure, go right ahead.
Okay. I see someone asked about what about buying hearing aids at Costco, and you know I don't have any real comments about buying hearing aids at Costco. I shop at Costco, and I know they have good policies for returning, and my experience has been customer service, but I can't really comment about buying hearing aids at Costco. I think the same would apply to for Costco as to any other retailer. Can you put up the info about the next board meeting in May 22 again? I didn't get it all down, and yeah, basically, let's see if I can. Oops, here we go. I didn't have any specific information, but if you go to our website there, speechandhearing.ca.gov, you can see that. You can see on our website when the board meeting is, and it'll have information on how to connect to that particular meeting.
And also, you'll get, I think the agenda for the meeting gets attached 24 or 48 hours before the meeting, something like that.
Yes, a week before the meeting, we'll have the agenda up.
Yeah, okay.
It's actually 10 days.
Well, I'm on your email list, so I get an email regarding the meeting, and I get the agenda. So can anybody request to be on your email list?
Yes. On our website, there's an interested parties link that you could look at to find out more about information, legislation, information that we put out to the public. And see if I can just find out exactly where that is. There's several links on our website, and I know you can see that there, but it's an interested parties list. Someone else had a question about many seniors buy hearing aids at Costco. Please speak to that. Again, you know, I don't have anything negative to say about any particular company, and I can't really comment about any particular company because that would be an endorsement and it would be inappropriate. But you know, like I said, I personally shop at Costco, and I know that they have good customer service and good return policies. So unfortunately, I can't really talk about that. Does all this apply to California? I'm in Ohio. Are there similar laws in other states? I would just check with your licensing board. Most of these licensing boards in other states are called Board of Examiners. Sometimes they're under one company. California is, you know, largest state in the union. So we're going to have individual boards that just deal with individual professions. Some smaller states have one board or bureau that deals with a bunch of different professions. So I would check. I imagine Ohio is probably similarly structured to our board. What is a locked hearing aid? How does this impact the quality of hearing aids and our consumer protection? Well, I don't think that the locked hearing aid necessarily speaks to the quality of the hearing aid. The issue is when you want to get it adjusted, you may be limited to that particular company that you purchase a hearing aid. Some of these companies will share their software with other hearing aid dispensers or audiologists, and some of them don't. So I know that the experts on our board that we work with can speak more to that, but the important thing for us is that you know that you're buying a locked hearing aid. Now, I'm not saying, you know, don't buy it. I'm just saying know what the limitations are when it comes to programming or adjustment. Someone said technically they cannot be called hearing aids if they've not met the FDA requirements, otherwise they are PSAPs. That is correct, Margaret. The FDA will determine what is a hearing aid and what is an over-the-counter hearing aid once those regulations are set. And there's a difference between those. My understanding is that hearing aid devices sold at Costco are locked. Do you know if that is the case? You know, we've been told that, but we've actually had representatives at our board tell us the contrary, representatives from Costco. And I think we may have even received something in writing from Costco. So since it's the law, when you go to Costco, you can call them. I've called their different departments for, you know, tires or eyeglasses. So you can call them and you can ask them the question, and I'm sure they'll answer the question for you. I would hate to speak on their behalf and not really know. I bought them at Costco, was really pleased with the ones they sold me, could sync with Android phones, unable to find that with anyone else. They were also $13.99 for both years. Let's see, another comment about Costco. Costco ones are not locked, as the ones I bought were actually Phonak. And I think that regardless of what the brand is, some of these companies make hearing aids specifically, some of the manufacturers will make hearing aids specifically for a company. And those may or may not be locked regardless of what they're called. But, you know, again, check with Costco on that. I would also add that a user success is based as much on knowledge and experience of the fitter as it is on the particular instrument being fed. Amen to that. I don't disagree with that. And if you find a good, if you find a good person, a good audiology or hearing aid dispenser, that's a good thing. My experience has been Costco hearing aids are locked. Okay, we already talked about that. Next comment, my understanding is that they're locked. Verify with the hearing aid department. I agree with that. My point in the question about Costco, which is that their hearing aids are not the newest, and I ask if the persons who sell them are licensed audiologists. And I don't know the answer to that. Yes.
We have a couple of people that have their hands raised. Maybe we could address that.
Okay.
So Ann Mundell, Noel.
Thank you, Paul, for your presentation. It was excellent. The question I have is still about locked hearing aids, but what I wanted to know is you said that the people who sell locked hearing aids, they have to have it in writing on the contract. Is that accurate?
They have to provide it in writing, and it has to be signed. It's a written notice that has to be signed by the licensee and by the purchaser.
So I guess my question with that being is that it could be on the purchase agreement or the fitting agreement, but it's not necessarily true that the person selling the hearing aid has to tell them that it's a locked hearing aid. They just have to have the information in writing somewhere that's 10-point font or greater, and the person needs to sign it. So if you don't read your fitting agreement or your purchase agreement, you may not be aware that you're buying a locked hearing aid, is kind of what I'm trying to get at.
That's a good point. You know, a lot of times when we make these purchases, whether we're buying a hearing aid or a car, we have all these areas to sign an initial. We're exhausted because we've done all the research, we've waited, and now we just want to get on with this and make our purchase and get out of there. So the dispenser is going to have you sign certain areas. And that's something that we want to make sure that if you're signing it, you know, as Ann said, read it. It's very important that you read what you're signing.
The biggest part about that Yeah, I would say just from a consumer's point of view, the best way you can protect yourself against that is just being aware of what national organizations usually lock their hearing aid. And I think that Tony has some of that information on the Mission Viejo website. We have it on our website as well, but just for consumer awareness that there's usually just a few brands, but just being aware of it. It doesn't make, like you said, a bad hearing aid. They just need to be aware that if they move or that person is no longer at that office, that they have a choice to move somewhere else if they wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you.
ma'am.
There's
So
another
Michael,
hand
Michael
raised.
Connolly, readinglips.com.
My name is Michael Conley. I'm from San Diego, HLA San Diego. And I joined this meeting specifically because of my concern for other people who buy over-the-counter hearing aids. And you actually raised, or you provided the information I think everybody needs to know. The comment that I just wanted to make is, I've been wearing hearing aids since I was 5 years old. And in my experience, service is everything. When you buy a hearing aid, you want to have a relationship with the hearing aid dealer that you feel comfortable with the person who's selling the hearing aid. And over-the-counter hearing aids do not provide that. But in my experience, service is king. The most important thing is that you'll be able to go back to that person and make the adjustment. And it's going to cost a little more, but it's a better investment. So that's the only comment I wanted to make.
I hope everyone heard what Michael just said, because that is the whole point of having a licensing board. Thank you, Michael. And I think something as important as hearing, has to do with your quality of life. And that's not something you want to go, cheap should not be the priority. I understand that we want to get the best price, but you want quality. And that's the first thing that you want. And that's why we need to make sure that, not only are people qualified, but then you take it a step further and you want to find out who's providing the best service so that you can have the best product when it's all said and done. So thank you for that. I'll go through some of the comments now, Tony. I see that someone else just commented on Costco being locked, and I think that we talked about that. You're welcome, David. Let's see. Somebody said that is not true in all states, so buyer beware if you expect to be visiting out of state. California is the most progressive in protections, but not all states have those same protections. Well, I like hearing that, and I'm certainly proud of what we do to protect consumers. Is there any place where consumers can get an overview of all the newest hearing aids on the market and the differences between them? Consumers can be confused. Tony, do you know of any consumer-based websites that might have information, general information on the newest hearing aids on the market?
I do. Hearingtracker.com. Hearingtracker.com. And there's a lot of commentary, and I believe there's consumer input, and just be aware that there's advertisement on that website as well that supports the website. So, be aware of that. But there's a lot of information on Hearing Tracker.
Thank you. Someone said, let's see, FYI, Christopher Baker, after getting hearing aids from various dispensers, mostly not the best results. Even the good ones are usually linked to a specific vendor. Last 8 years, I've been going out to a local school of audiology at our local university. I've been extremely happy because 1, not looking for profits, 2, not limited to 1 or 2 vendors or models, 3, there are students, though they are students, there's always high skilled professional doctor there too. And, I'm sure that they're happy too to be working on patients. Just something to add, while I've been with the board, we only had 1 school of audiology for many years in San Diego. A few years back, we added the University of Pacific. They have a school in San Francisco. Now we changed the law so that we could have doctoral programs at the California State Universities. And I know that there are at least 3 or 4 that are moving, and we expect to have many more qualified audiologists coming out of our California schools. We're very proud of that. Alan Katsura, there is a thread in the HLA leaders group about getting a copy of the consumer guide. to Hearing Aids, a publication, Consumer's Guide to Hearing Aids 2022. Yes, thank you for that. I see another hand raised too.
Yes.
Susan?
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for mentioning Hearing Tracker. I'm the one that asked the question about, is there a place to go to get information? I got my first hearing aids in 2015, shortly after I retired, and realized I needed them, and I didn't know where to go to find out about the field and what was available. And so I visited every audiologist I could find. I'm in San Francisco. The first one I went to was in the neighborhood, and they were showing me the very newest that had the, you could put it on your cell phone, you could hear it, the Bluetooth, all of that. They let me try one on, and then they put a contract in front of me and said, here, sign. And I fled. That made me very nervous. If I knew what I know now, I would have reported them because I thought that was a fast sell, and evidently they were hurting for business. I later had to go to a specific one for my insurance, and I stayed with them. But they don't have all the information either. So I've been doing research on my own every 3 years when I get new ones. And I have found the Hearing Tracker to be the only place that shows that. And I wish there was some place that would show them just that one after another and show you the pluses and the minuses, what's new in the industry for those of us who like to upgrade when our contract is up.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, do we have any more messages here?
I don't see any more messages. I hope I didn't miss anyone, but I don't think I did.
Okay, so Arlene Roma from New Jersey.
I just wanted to say hi. I love going to California HLAA sessions. It's the afternoon here, and I enjoyed your presentation. I just wanted to have an anecdote of my own about the horror stories with hearing aids. It's been a long time since I've had hearing aids because I've had cochlear implants for almost 25 years, but I used hearing aids for 25 years before that. I had a broken hearing aid in Manhattan, New Jersey, was going to a concert, and of course it broke right before the concert. So I wasn't near the hearing aid dispenser that I usually use, which was the League for the Hard of Hearing in New York, now called the Center for Hearing and Communication. So we had to find a hearing aid dealer quick to get a loan or anything to go to the concert. So we did, and the guy was very nice, and he found a hearing aid that was kind of similar to the one I had, and then he proceeded to try to sell me another one. And it was like, I was like blindsided. It was just so sleazy. You know, here I was, I had a broken hearing aid, and he's doing nice things. And then he tries to, again, what made me think of that, sign on the line here, sign on that line. And this happened 30 years ago or more, and it just stays with you, you know, that, well, you're just trying to be taken for a ride. So eyes wide open if you're with somebody you have not dealt with before. And of course, recommendations count a lot.
Okay, any more raised hands? I don't see anybody. Last chance for questions. Wow, I learned a few things, Paul. I've just really enjoyed having you, and I'm so glad that we're recording this so that we can share this on our YouTube channel. And what I'm going to do is
Tony, I think we have one more question.
Oh, we do? Okay.
And I think, you know, what differences do you suppose there will be between a hearing aid and an over-the-counter, a prescription hearing aid and over-the-counter hearing aid? And I think that the difference is really, aside from, you know, we're looking at regulations. We're looking at the laws that basically kind of define the parameters of over-the-counter hearing aids. But I think the real difference is who they're intended for. And And as one of our participants said, the service that you're getting when you work with a licensee or an expert, and the person from the East Coast that talked about, the experience that she had. I understand, I think we all need to understand that these are people that have to make money. They're doing this for a living, and we understand that. But I also think that in addition to looking at the licensing board to see if there's any discipline or any enforcement actions against them, look at your reviews. Reviews are not everything. We know that. We know that a lot of these Yelp reviews are not always accurate, but you can kind of get a pattern if you read them. And that might be a way to kind of tell you who to look out for and who not to look out for. So as far as Sarah, your question, I think it's really who they're intended for. And I'm sure there are other experts that can speak more to this than I can, but until we see the final regulations, we won't really totally know the answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. It's my experience is that people, especially those venturing out to get a hearing aid for the first time, really doesn't know what they need or what they want. And when you buy an over-the-counter hearing aid, what are you getting? What kind of help will you get? Generally speaking, they may send you to a website where you self-test, and then how does the hearing aid get adjusted? How do you know about any features? Like, for example, are you getting a telecoil? That's something we haven't talked about today at all, but that's an important feature I think that people should be sure and ask for when they're getting hearing aids. But anyway, so there's not a lot of help. You're sort of on your own, and it may be $7.99 for 2 hearing aids, but you've just put $7.99 in the trash. I mean, you've wasted your money if you can't get if it can't help. There's a lot of people who don't understand very mild hearing aids, hearing loss, and severe and profound. And so I don't think, and I haven't tried them all, but I don't think the over-the-counter aids are really designed for people with severe and profound hearing loss. So a lot of people, because they haven't been tested, know where they stand on that scale. So
I think we have a couple more hands raised.
we do.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
yes, Nancy?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
I'm trying, can you hear me? Yes, okay.
yes.
I actually put a message in the chat box, but it sounded like you were closing down and I wanted to get my question answered. Should I repeat it here? Or do you
Yes.
want to go?
Please do.
Yes, please.
I've worn hearing aids for, I don't know, 30 years and I'm overdue for a new pair. I've tried maybe 3 or 4 different manufacturers and I can't get the hearing that I'm hoping for. Should I keep trying different ones or maybe I'm just not? I'm wondering if different hearing aids work differently for different people.
Yes.
I think that we have an audiologist on, right, Tony? Is she still on?
Anne, are you still here? Okay, Anne's not here. Is David here? Oh, he's left. He's gone too.
I think that would have been a good question for one of them, but I think that rather than going to a hearing aid dispenser location, maybe at this point you need to go back through the route of getting medical attention, so they could look into where you need to be referred. Is this an ENT issue? Is this an audiology issue?
Oh, so even though I love my audiologist, she's wonderful. I just can't get.
Oh, you're talking about the hearing aid themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
and trying ones that I haven't purchased yet, demo ones, loaners,
I see.
to see if it works for me. And I'm willing to pay the money, but I can't get a good enough sound or quality. I'm still missing a lot, even with hearing aids.
And I would think, unfortunately, I would think that's something that the audiologist could probably answer more than I can, because they have your specific information and they've looked at your ears. But yeah, I don't know if I could help you there. Tony, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that there is a test that audiologists do, some best practices audiologists, patient-centered audiologists do, and it's called real ear. It's called a real ear test. And it's actually a test that while you're wearing the hearing aid, and they have a little tiny microphone in there, and the audiologist can hear what you're hearing and make sure it's not too loud, too soft, too echoey. There's a lot of results that can come from that test. So you should ask about a real ear test. However, if you haven't had one, it's my understanding that the audiologist, there's equipment expenses that audiologists have to bring that diagnostic tool in. So either they have it or they don't. So
Okay, I'll check into these suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
welcome. Winnie, you have
Yeah.
a question?
Somebody asked a question and it didn't get addressed, and I was just wondering, how long do hearing aids last on average?
Well, none of our professionals are here, but I can speak a little bit to that. If you take really good care of your hearing aids and they're not exposed to a lot of moisture, body moisture, atmosphere moisture, if you dry them every night in a special box, they can last you a really good long time. So a lot of it has to, oh, and also, don't put hairspray on your hair when you've got your hearing aids in. There's just a lot of little things that taking good care of your hearing aids. Technology-wise, I've heard be sure and check your get a test every year. But hearing aids, you may want to consider getting new hearing aids every couple of years.
Wait, you sounded muffled there. I missed that last thing you said.
Okay. Hearing aids should be good for about 5 years, but technology is changing so rapidly you may want to upgrade before that time. In the meantime, take good care of your hearing aids. Use a dryer, either a desiccant jar or an electric dryer specifically made for drying hearing aids.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony. I have a couple of comments in the chat. Susan asks, how much impact can we as consumers have in the over-the-counter hearing aid regulations? Where can we have input? I included a link there in the chat because I don't know if the comment period was up in January of 18th, and I'm not an expert in the federal regulations process, but usually when there are many comments that are substantive in the regulations process, there's another comment period because they may have to address those and may have to make changes. So follow this link, take a look at it, and if you have an opportunity to comment, you'll see it here in this area. That's a website for the Federal Register, and there may be other areas. I have staff that actually do this for me, but I see that the federal e-rulemaking portal link is listed on this webpage on the link that I provided you. And then I think Alan was commenting on one of our participants that maybe you're a cochlear implant candidate. And I think, again, that's about talking to the expert to see what you need there.
Yes.
I don't see any other comments, Tony.
Yeah, audiologists get specialized training, and they're usually available locally here, UCI, University Irvine, UCI has an audiology department. You can go to San Francisco, San Diego. There are places, and I have a cochlear implant as well as a hearing aid. So if anybody would like to ask me about where to go for a cochlear implant evaluation, I'll be happy to help with that. Well, you know, I do want to save time here for our special announcement. Paul, fantastic.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing, Tony?
We need to do this more often. The last time you spoke you were in person here in Laguna Woods. It was in 2017, October 2017. Way too long.
I remember during the fires.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I've actually learned a lot just from talking to all of you. And you all are really, those of you that are using hearing aids, you're the experts and you know a lot. And, you know, I think these discussions are very helpful to many people that are listening. And I just thank you for this opportunity. And, you know, we'll just continue to try and do a good job to protect consumers out there when it comes to hearing aids. So thank you, Tony, for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you, everybody, for attending, because we wouldn't be able to have a meeting unless you weren't here. So we have Matt or Christina here. Are you here?
Yes, you have Christina today. Matt is to my side, so if you guys would prefer to see Matt, he is here as well.
Okay, so we have a little special announcement. Let's see, I'm trying to find your... Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you again, Paul. Okay. So Christina is from InnoCaption, and I'm going to do an extremely quick screen share. Let's see here. Oh. Okay, here we go. So this is, oops. I don't know if you can see all of that. Okay, so can you see the, yeah. You see the InnoCaption screen? Okay. And what happened to, okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. All right. Christina, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Tony. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. My name's Christina, and I am with the InnoCaption team. I am here today because we actually put out a casting call for members of the community. As I'm sure most, if not everybody on this call knows, there's a pretty big issue nowadays with representation, in the sense of, obviously, deaf and hard of hearing individuals have been portrayed in the media more and more in Hollywood, which is awesome. As a small company, we use a lot of stock images and stock videos. And half the time I find myself looking at these individuals, even when they have hearing aids and cochlear implants, and the way they're sitting, and thinking to myself, is this person actually a member of the community, or did they just stick that on there? So in order to ensure that in the marketing that we're using at InnoCaption, we're using actual community members, people who are deaf and hard of hearing, we decided to put out a casting call to the community for our next video shoot. I'm going to go ahead and share the link to the casting call in the chat. So basically what we are looking for, if you saw this casting call ad before, we took out the specific parts because we haven't heard back from anybody interested in participating yet. The compensation is $500 a day. We're working through a video company, so we're not asking for volunteers, but we're hoping that people can submit headshots, experience if you have any. If you don't have experience, that's okay too. We are looking for individuals with hearing aids and cochlear implants. If you don't have hearing aids and cochlear implants, go ahead and email anyways. Just note that, because we can use you for photo shoots in the future. The reason for this specific video shoot, we're looking for individuals with hearing aids and cochlear implants, is because since we're a federally regulated service, we get compensation from the FCC for minutes that are accumulated on the phone. We're shooting a very short video, And we want to make clear for people who are hearing watching it that to be eligible, you have to be deaf or hard of hearing. We know obviously that not everybody who is deaf or hard of hearing wears cochlear implants or hearing aids. For this specific video, that is what we're looking for. I see Susan is asking what InnoCaption is. So InnoCaption, and I guess that is very relevant to participate in a video shoot. As Tony was showing the website, InnoCaption is a free mobile app on your phone for individuals in the deaf and hard of hearing community who wish to use their voices to speak to the individual on the other end, but need captions to understand. We provide the captions of what the other party is saying to you via CART provider or stenographer, just like the captions we have today in this presentation. There is a live CART provider using shorthand for the captions. We also have the option for our users to use automatic speech recognition. So since we have a co-CEO who is hard of hearing and a user of the service, we're always updating the app based on feedback from the community. So we give community members the ability to switch back and forth as their accessibility needs change between automatic speech recognition like computerized captions or a live CART provider. And I will put the website. Oh, Julia, thank you for putting the website there already. And Matt's sitting next to me and asking if Paul is still on the call. Matt did watch the entire presentation while I was in another meeting, and he said it was just wonderful. So he wanted to make sure that I thanked Paul for all of that wonderful information. So I know it says on here the deadline to submit is April 12th. We are hoping to get people to apply as quickly as possible so we can talk to the casting company and figure out next steps and planning. When you click the apply now button, it'll be to send an email to Matt. So you can ask any other questions that you may have as well. So if you know other people who may be interested in applying, please, please, please feel free to share the link with them. We want as many people as possible to apply because again, even if somebody is not asked to participate in this specific video shoot, we want to do other video shoots and photo shoots, again, just to make sure that the media that we're using represents people in the community and it's not, you know, a hearing person throwing on a hearing aid or, so yeah. Any other questions? Tony, you are on mute. We cannot hear you.
Okay, would you give people your email address or your phone number, because we really have to conclude this meeting. Our captioner, you know, we just have her for so long, so I do want to respect that.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and put matt@innocaption.com. I'll put my email address, christina@innocaption.com as well. But keep in mind, my name does not have an H in it. So if you put Christina with an H instead of CR, I will not get the email. If you're worried you may do that, just email Matt. And Matt, if you want to wave really quick since you are on the side. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. And Tony, thank you for allowing us to make this announcement. Oh, I see Michael Connolly here. I see so many familiar faces. And Alan, it's so nice to see all of you guys. So thank you, Tony, again. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. See you all in May. I'll be sending out an email about our May program. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.